Hi, welcome to Algebra 2. This is Lesson 9. We're going to talk about percent word problems, and we're starting on page 56. To compute a given percent of a number, we can first divide the number into 100 parts. So 30% of a number means 30 of these parts. 193% of a number means 193 of the parts, etc. 1% of 242 is 242 over 100, which equals 2.42. 30% of 242 would be 30 times 1%. And in this case, we're out of 242, so 242 divided by 100. So this is 30 times 2.42, which is 72.6. 193% of 242 is 193 times 242 divided by 100, which equals 467.06. Percent word problems fall into several different categories, and it's important to understand them so you know if your answer is reasonable. The book's diagrams are one good way to visualize what the problem is asking for. You are not required to do the diagrams, but if you have trouble with these kind of problems, give the diagrams a try. So here's our first example. The wood nymphs and the maids gambled and frolicked before the banquet began. If 70% of those present were wood nymphs and 120 maids were present, how many wood nymphs came to the banquet? Okay, so let's start with a diagram. Here are all of the wood nymphs and maids who are present. This is 100% of the banquet attendees. We know that 70% of those presents were wood nymphs, so that's about here. That leaves this being 30%, which is 120 maids. Okay, so we know that the number of wood nymphs is going to be a little over twice as many as there are maids, because 70% is over twice as much as 30%. So an answer that's reasonable is going to be over 240 wood nymphs, because there are 120 maids. There are going to be more than 240 maids. Okay, so that's how the diagrams work. We're going to think through it. Our answer needs to be not very far from 240, but larger than 240. If you get an answer that's way more than 240 or less than 240, you know your answer isn't reasonable and you made a mistake. Okay? That wasn't that painful. Alright, let's keep going. If 70% of the attenders were wood nymphs, that means 30% were maids. So we can say that 30%, which is 30 over 100, 30% of the attenders equals 120. From this, we can find out how many attenders there are. So we're going to solve for A. We're going to start by multiplying this by the inverse to get rid of this fraction. And then 120 times 100 divided by 30 is 400. So there are 400 attenders. Our question is how many wood nymphs came. So if there are 400 attenders and 120 maids, there are 280 wood nymphs, which sure enough is larger than 240, but not very much larger. Let's try another one. The harvest was cornucopian, as it was 120% greater than last year. If the yield was 140,800 bushels, how many bushels were harvested last year? Okay, let's start with a diagram. Last year, they harvested everything they harvested. So here's 100% of last year's harvest. Okay? This year's harvest was 120% greater. That means they harvested the same amount plus 100% more plus about 20% more than that. Okay? So the answer you get is going to be considerably larger than, the number we get for the amount that was harvested last year is going to be considerably less than what was harvested this year. It's going to be less than half of this year's harvest. And the number we're going to be dealing with is not 120%, it's 100 plus 120. So we're going to be dealing with 220%. So 220%, percent means we put it over 100, of last year's harvest equals this year's harvest. Okay? We can solve for this by multiplying for the inverse here. And pulling out your calculator and finding that last year's harvest was 64,000 bushels. Okay? The diagrams are actually pretty helpful. Try them. They don't take a lot of time. They help you think things through. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Do the practice problems, try the diagrams, and your homework, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks!